Good evening, everybody. It is the Safety and the Sportswriter show with Knoxville Nate and Big Joe as we get ready to talk to you about the world of football and sports in general. A week that is ending up with a little bit better news than it started out with as we Damar Hamlin, uh, almost the big tragedy that happened on the field, but thanks to the medical staff, uh, the picture became better today. And I understand that he is awake and alert. And one of the first things he asked was, "Did the Bills win?"
Yeah.
So, people got to realize, I was listening to a lot of the press conferences today, and talking about whether he'll play football again is premature and not important
Yeah, I
right
mean
now.
he's not even talking yet. I mean,
Right
he's communicating by writing things down, but he's still on a machine helping him breathe. And there's never a guarantee once they take you off that machine entirely that you'll be just fine. I mean, you never really know when they have assisted life support machines hooked up to you. How your body will react once they take you off. So he's definitely not out of the woods yet, and those questions are a long way off
now.
from being asked. I mean, I don't think that's even appropriate at this point.
Yeah, I'd say it's right now. It's getting him breathing on his own again. It's getting his head in a good place too, and step at a time. It's going to be like baby steps. Get him, his football career should be the last thing he's worried about right now. What he should be worried about is just being able to have a normal lifestyle. And from what I heard from some of the doctors today that appeared, they said, he has the prognosis of having a normal life. He said, all the signs look good. So
Well,
that's
yeah,
the
I mean,
biggest thing.
based upon I'm not a doctor, and I'm never going to be one. I'm not smart enough to be a doctor, but I certainly have heard a lot of doctors interviewed over the last week or so about this, and the event that caused it doesn't do irreparable harm to the heart. It's just whenever you stop breathing and you don't have oxygen, being dispersed throughout your body, you obviously can have problems. So
Right.
that's where the question marks lie. But certainly he can. People have recovered from this before, and this happens. It just doesn't happen that often in football.
No.
But this has happened in other sports. I've seen it.
Hockey.
Lacrosse. I've certainly I haven't seen it myself live, but I've heard of this happening. I had a lot of friends play lax when I was growing up, and I've heard of this occurring. In that sport. So it's a scary, scary thing, though. I knew I was watching the game
Yep.
live, and I knew something was wrong right when I saw the people, sprinting like they were, and when I saw the face of some of the medical staff, I knew this was not your ordinary situation. That's for sure.
Yeah, I mean, I turned away from the screen for a minute, and I heard Buck or Aikman say something. I turned back around and saw the reaction, and a lot of things came to mind. We talked about before he came on the air. Hank Gather, I saw that on ESPN replays. What happened there? But I remember watching Lawrence Taylor the Theismann injury, and I watched that live, and you could tell. I'll never forget Lawrence Taylor jumping up and signaling for the medical staff to come on because he knew how bad the injury was. So credit to most of football and most of the announcers. I'm not going to pick out certain guys. There was only a few people who tried to capitalize on this incident for their ratings or whatever they do it for by trying to make it was T. Higgins' fault? Was it this? Was it that? Should they have stopped the game? Of course they should stop the game. All you had to do was look at the players' faces, and you knew they couldn't play. There should have been no doubt about it. And then I'm going to defend the NFL a little bit about this because people were like, well, Buck came out and said they're going to do a 5-minute warm up, or they waited. Why didn't they call it right away? You got to go through a lot of different procedures and make sure everybody's on the same page before you call a game.
Well, and the refs don't even have the authority to
Right.
call the game, so they have to be the only way that a game can be. The referees can temporarily suspend a game for an emergency situation like that, but only the NFL can cancel a game or postpone a game or something like that. So it was kind of a wait and see approach. And I saw some of the morons on the internet were giving Joe Burrow a hard time because he was warming up. And, they said, Josh Allen wasn't warming up, but Joe Burrow was. And, that just shows he's heartless and all this stuff. And I was like, he was told to do that. And, the other thing I heard was the NFL said they never said that and they were backpedaling. And I'm like, well, Joe Buck didn't make, I don't even like Joe Buck, but he didn't make that up. Someone told him that. So
it was an unprecedented situation. The last time they had someone die in the NFL was what, in the late 60s on the field? A guy named Chuck Hughes with Detroit. He had a heart attack. They brought that up, and it's unprecedented. At first you freeze. Well, first of all, the biggest thing was get the kid breathing again and get him to the hospital.
Yeah.
Who cares about, and that took, time. And, like I said, I'm sure that there's a mechanism, but you have to go through it. And one of the things that that came out today, and when I was watching a little bit on the news, is, to their credit, the NFL has trauma people at every level who practice this kind of situation at their games. So
they saved his life.
Yeah, and they knew, because they practiced it, they knew exactly what to do.
They saved his life. Those guys, the medical personnel from each team, the the paramedics that were there, all of those people are to be commended because they saved his life. He's alive right now because of their resuscitation efforts, and they were the true heroes of that night. And just what an awful thing to happen to a young man of 24 years old. Just something that none of us have ever seen before, at least people my age have never seen before. I wasn't alive in the 60s, so I don't recall the incident with the Detroit player, but for anybody, it's just a horrible thing and a horrible thing to have happen, especially when it's supposed to be a big time playoff season for the NFL and supposed to be, all eyes on their product. And
this is a centerpiece game. Deal. Two of the best quarterbacks, best young quarterbacks and the best young teams, the team that was supposed to be in the Super Bowl last year and the team who took its place last year for the AFC, dueling for the chance to basically, both of them still had a chance for home field advantage. The one thing, I wanted to go over with you two is I'm not sure. I didn't, I was going over the internet today. Did they cancel the Cincinnati Bills game? Did they say they're not going to bother playing it?
I'm not sure. I don't believe they've reached a final decision on that, or at least to my knowledge, I don't believe they've made a final decision. I don't know how you could just not play that. I don't know what you're going to do if you just say that it's a tie. I don't think you can really do that because that kind of manipulates the point systems.
Yeah.
I don't know how they're going to handle this honestly, but they can't really play the game now because 2 days have already passed and we've kind of moved on. So I'm not sure what they're going to do or how they fix this. But it's certainly a messy situation as far as the playoff picture goes.
Yeah. Kansas City wins. I think Kansas City takes it. They're for number one seed. I read some things they're mulling over, which is basically having Kansas City give up the bye week somehow. I don't know. There's a lot of basically what you could do is just move the playoffs back a week, have them be a standalone game, and then start the playoffs week after it if you really needed to do it. But I don't know if you really need to do that. If Kansas City wins, what's the big difference? And the other thing is, one of the guys on ESPN said, there's bad karma around this game. I don't think the players really want to play it after, what went on. So
yeah, I think at this point you just kind of have to move on. I really don't see the point. There's really, as far as time goes, I don't know how you could play. It's not like a baseball game or a basketball game or something where you can just play it and then the guys can play another game in 2 days. Playing an NFL football game, it takes these guys time to recover. And I just don't see how it's fair to mix this game and put it in the middle of Week 18 and playoffs. I just don't know how they would do that.
No, I think and like I said, in the long run, it's not that important. They're in the playoffs. It's not like they're not going to qualify for the playoffs. You know, only one team is going to get the bye anyway. It's probably going to be Kansas City. The one thing I question is, and maybe because they got the good news today, which is really good, I was questioning whether I could see the Bills being ready to play on Sunday. You know, they got a big game coming up against the Patriots, but I mean, man, that's a lot to process in a week. I know they probably had counselors at the facility to talk to these kids, and they probably had doctors coming in explaining what's going on with their teammate and stuff. But still, it takes a while to get that if at all, be able to get that sight out of your mind. So, what do you think about the Bills this weekend coming up?
As we mentioned previously, this is unprecedented. I'm not sure how the team reacts to this. That was the thing during the game. Susie kept pestering, Booger about how the players would get themselves ready to play again. Well, in normal injury situations where there's a possible neck injury or things like that, they give the players a few minutes to warm up and all that. But this was different. This is a situation where a guy's heart stopped. He certainly could have died on the field. It affected everybody emotionally and then some. And I still think it's going to affect them. Now, could this be something that they use as motivation? And once they know that he's going to live and they know that he's okay and maybe his status is upgraded from critical, could this be something that pushes them? Maybe. I don't know. But I think it's kind of a wait and see approach as to how the Bills bounce back from this, if they bounce back from it, and how they play moving forward after something like this has happened. I certainly think all of them are probably a little bit emotionally drained. The only thing that really I thought was weird, I'm not saying it's in bad taste. I'm not complaining. I'm not angry at anybody, but I just thought it was so weird how they were so concerned with packing up their stuff. And they were like packing up the stuff on the sidelines as quickly as they could. And then the Bills kind of got out of town so fast. And I didn't see the reason as to why they had to pack up so quick and the reason as to why they had to get out of town so quickly. That was kind of confusing to me, but maybe I'm just an idiot.
You'd have to ask them about that. I don't know. It does seem it should have been less on the priority list than they did.
Well, some of the guys wanted to stay.
Yeah.
Stephon Diggs and a couple of the other players, said, we're not leaving. We want to see how he's doing. We don't want to go anywhere. They wanted to stay put, which I certainly understand, especially the guys that are really close to him or anybody on the team that just felt like they wanted to be there. I think they should have been allowed to stay. So I didn't understand why we had to get on the plane and get the hell out of there so quickly. That was kind of strange.
Yeah, I definitely would have let the players stay who wanted to stay. I mean, that's them. Get them rooms and have them stay. And the other thing is to make sure the family's taken care of. That's the one thing that came to mind. I haven't heard yet, and I don't want to criticize anybody unduly, but I would hope that Roger Goodell would have gotten on his private plane and flown there. Just to meet the family, tell them the NFL will be there to support them. This is a young man who, had a bright future, and you don't want to bring this up, but I mean, he isn't one of these bonus babies. He's a guy who fought his way into this league, and his family. There's going to be some costs ahead of him. So hopefully the NFL. I love what the people have done with his charity. Yeah. I think that's fantastic. I think how everybody's gotten involved, even the Tom Brady's to Russell Wilson's. And everybody's sending donations to a charity. I guess he had hoped to raise something like $2,500, and he's raising millions. And
it was up over 7 million the last time I checked. So that's pretty cool when we can turn some of these horrific tragedies into a positive in any way, shape, or form. I think that's really cool. But I mean, where do they go from here? That's the question. I think obviously Hamlin's focus needs to be on his health. First and foremost, I don't think he should even think about playing anymore this year. or ever again at this point. I just don't
Yeah.
think that should be anything he should concern himself with.
The other thing, we'll go to another injury or a couple injury things going on. And Lamar Jackson, I mean, it's funny. When you look at what Aaron Judge did to the Yankees this year when he bet on himself and went out and had a year for the ages and they had to pay him off. Well, Lamar Jackson got hurt, but he's having his usual good year, and he's their whole team. And right now, he's got the Ravens over a barrel. They better be working on a contract with this guy because
if I were him, I don't know if I'd rush back. I mean, I don't know how severe this injury is. They haven't really explained the severity of the injury. I mean, I thought he had a sprained knee, but it's got to be more severe than that. And you know what? Without a contract in place, I sure as hell wouldn't be rushing back to get back on the field when I have no guarantee of getting paid further. Right now, the injury is what it is. He's going to be able to play again. He's going to be able to come back at some point. I'm not sure if I'm him, I'd rush back. I don't care about the playoffs, man. He's got to think about his future moving forward. And, people can say that's selfish if they want, but they're not in the situation he's in. He doesn't have the luxury of getting $40 million a year like all these other starting quarterbacks who are, in the caliber of Lamar Jackson are set up as. He's not in that realm. And don't get me wrong, no one's crying Argentina for Lamar. He's got some money. But, I just think it's a shame how this contract situation has been handled. I know that they made offers to him, but they should have made a bigger move to get this done before the season or during the season, because now it's a distraction. And they're talking about being in the playoffs, and it's like you still don't have your quarterback signed, and now he's banged up. And I just knew this was going to be a disaster at some point, and it's kind of turned into that.
It is, and you can even tell. I was listening to a clip from that John Harbaugh is like, I think he's resigned to I don't know he's coming back. I don't know if he will come back. He's kind of you can tell he's not enjoying his season right now. And he should be getting ready for the playoffs. He's going to be one of 14 teams that are still alive after Sunday. So,
well, they're not the same team. I mean, Tyler Huntley is an okay backup. He's gone 2-2. That's what me and you always talk about asking your backup to do. Yeah. Come in a 4-game stretch, win us 2 out of the 4. We're good. We're okay. But we all can watch this offense and know that this is not sustainable to have success in the playoffs. And to perform at a high level without Lamar in there. Lamar is their offense. Let's be honest. Tyler doesn't have much help. I mean, who are the wide receivers helping Tyler Huntley besides 47-year-old Deshaun Jackson? There's no Rashad Bateman. They don't really have anybody else besides him. Mark Andrews hasn't really been the same this year since his injury. This team doesn't really have many weapons. And that's why if I'm Lamar, I'm not really seeing how fast I can get back out there to get hurt again.
And the other thing about the Ravens that you got to look at is their defense does not hold leads well. Next to the Raiders, they're probably the team that's given up the most leads. Oh, maybe the Texans, if they ever get a lead. But, I mean, they're like the worst at holding a lead outside of the Raiders.
Yeah, I mean, to let the rookie quarterback, Kenny Pickett, go down and win the game like that, that just shows you that they're incapable of getting a stop. All the pieces they've added throughout the season, adding JPP, signing the Roquan Smith. Yeah. This was supposed to make this defense formidable, and I'm not so sure that it is.
I don't think it is, and I think the guy who's going to be, going to have to fall on the sword or be reworked is their defensive coordinator. When all you have to do is look at what Martindale's done for the Giants. And this is the coach is the most obvious place to look on this one when you see what Martindale did. Even when his teams were beat up over the last few years, he kept them competitive. And it's just a really weird situation there. Another guy I wanted to go ahead.
I wanted to say too, this also begs the question that there's some teams that are potentially going to be making some coaching changes
after the end of the season. You know, it always happens where there's a lot of turnover.
Oh, yeah.
And, you know, there could be some teams that surprise us. You know, I'm not saying Harbaugh is going to get fired, but I'm just telling you, there's going to be some teams that we don't expect that the coach is either going to resign or get fired, and you know, or not get his contract renewed or whatever, that are going to jump out at people. And you know, I don't know whether the Ravens are that team per se, but I think if they go out in the first round again or perform very poorly, you know, a lot of this is going to come back down to the coach.
And he's been there a long time. You know what I mean?
Time.
Sometimes, you know, staying in one place for a long period of time, eventually it comes around to you and they say, what have you done for me lately?
Yeah.
And, you know, being one and done, as you say, doesn't really help. And let's talk about the other team right there that was in that game, Pittsburgh. Mike Tomlin, I mean, you and I love him. And everybody, you know, but still, I doesn't get the respect. I mean, I had given up on them. But now you look at Kenny Pickett and you go, maybe this kid can become a competent starting quarterback. I'm not going to put him into Joe Burrow, you know, that realm, or, you know, Josh Allen, or of course not Pat Mahomes, but not bad for a guy out of Pittsburgh who, you know, people questioned. People, you know, and you and I took him to task when he sat out that bowl game. But
yeah, I never questioned his ability, but I didn't really like that move.
No, we didn't question his ability, but I questioned his heart and his commitment for that. I
just thought that was a bad look. I didn't have a problem even with him opting out, but you opt out and then you travel with the team, and then you sit up in the press box, and then you're you know, the backup who's playing for you gets hurt in the first quarter, and it's like, you know, instead of playing our first round draft pick quarterback, now we're on number 3, and the number 1 guy's sitting up there with the headset on. I just thought that was a horrible look. And then you know, some people have questioned Tomlin, why didn't they put Pickett in earlier? I was one of those guys, but honestly, how can you argue with how they've handled him? I mean, he's really starting to come around. He's really starting to play some pretty good football for a rookie quarterback. And I just can't really criticize the way they've handled the situation. I think they've done what they thought was best for him, and he's certainly starting to pay off now. And to have this team on the verge of going in the playoffs and on the verge of potentially going 9-8, I think that's a win for the Steelers and for Coach Tomlin.
Yeah, and you got, you know, you got to look ahead at this team, and you look at the young wide receivers, the young tight end. Najee Harris maybe didn't have the year everybody, but he's starting around into shape. You know, they've got a lot of things heading in the right direction on that team, and it's going to be a tough division there for more than a few years with Cincinnati and them. Hopefully, Lamar gets settled in, and we'll see if Deshaun Watson, if he's not can keep himself from getting more trouble. That could be a fun division to watch. Another thing I saw today that was kind of surprising is, and it could just be people, you know, throwing spaghetti against the wall, see if it sticks. McDaniel down in Miami, there was some people throwing out there that maybe he'll get fired because of this late losing streak, because of the way he's handled the Tua situation with the concussions. I you know, it's hard for me to go totally against it being possible with what they did to Brian Flores last year.
Yeah, that's what I was just gonna say. How could you be surprised if they did fire him when, you know, they fired Flores last year after you know, how well they played at the end of the season. This year it's kind of been the opposite. They played really good at the beginning, then they had that kind of lull in the middle, then they kind of came back and won a few games, and now they've kind of gone back to the losing streak. I don't see how you can put this all on him. I mean, the quarterback position has just been a disaster with the Tua. I mean, if you want to criticize him and fire him for the way that they've handled Tua's concussions, I think that's a discussion to be had. I don't know how much of this rests on the head coach, you know, the quarterback's health and whether he can play and who clears him. I know they've already fired a couple of doctors, right. But, you know, how much does this fall on him? And then, you know, Bridgewater's health seems to be in question every time that he is supposed to be out there. And a lot of this, you know, a lot of these games have come down to Skylar Thompson out there, and that's not good when you get paid for winning football games.
Not unless you can get Kansas on your schedule to play with him with Kansas State. Maybe he'll win there.
Well, yeah, and Kansas is a lot better than they were when Skylar Thompson was there. So that's a whole new deal.
And then we're gonna switch back up to the NFC East. We got the Giants with nothing to play for except pride, and that it's just I'm sitting there as a Giant fan going, I like when the guys play at least a half in the last game, but also I don't want to see Saquon go down or Daniel Jones. You can't afford to lose either one of those guys.
I wouldn't play either one of them.
Yeah, I agree with you totally. And on the other side of the ball, the Eagles. I mean, they're trying to hang on to the number 1 seed, but you got Jalen Hurts, and you see, even though Gardner Minshew is a nice story and a competent backup quarterback, not bad. I mean, he's like you talked about, he could be one of those guys that could win you 2 or 3 games if Jalen Hurts was down. But he hasn't played really well.
No, and they've gone 0-2. I think you've got to put Hurts back in there and get him back into some sort of rhythm. I think you've got to get this team back on a winning track, and I think you've got to get Jalen out there and get him back into playing shape, get him back to
Shake
form.
the rust off.
Yeah, I just think it's important to get him out there if he's healthy. Obviously, if he's not healthy, then you don't risk it. But if he's healthy enough to play, I would certainly at least play him for as much of the game as I could.
Yeah, like you said, like I'm more worried about the Giants part of this, but yeah, I can see putting him in there. But at least play a half. At least play a half because I think the Giants will be resting most of their players because, like you said, it doesn't move up or down. They're locked into the 6th slot. Hopefully, looking at going back and having another shot at the Vikings. One thing that came out of the game last week with the Giants is the Thibodeau celebration while Foles was lying next to him on the ground. I don't know if you saw that.
Yeah, sure did.
There's so many layers to this thing to look at. That was it classless and not called for? Yes. I don't think he knew Foles was injured. But the one that, if you look at the clip, a teammate of his came over and celebrated with him while he was on the ground. He knew Foles was hurt.
Yeah.
He knew full well Foles was hurt. So he should have said, get up. You're making an ass out of yourself. Get up.
Yeah. You know what? Guys celebrate when they get sacks all the time. So why we're mad because Foles was injured? I mean, I really don't think you can just say that Thibodeau knew without getting into his head. I mean, nobody knows whether he knew or not, and you have to kind of give him the benefit of the doubt on this one, in my opinion.
And the other thing, if I'm Jeff Saturday, instead of going after Thibodeau, where was the offensive line going after Thibodeau?
Yeah,
where was his teammates letting him get away with that?
Yeah, he actually said something about that himself. He said he was disappointed that none of the offensive linemen came to protect the quarterback or to stand up for him when people were celebrating when he was injured. He was very upset about that, and rightfully so. They should be. I think it kind of goes to show you that a lot of the Colts have checked out.
Definitely checked out, and I don't think Jeff Saturday should really be. They need to get a head coach in there who knows what he's doing. Jeff Saturday's years away from having this job and knowing what to do with it. He may be a head coach down the line somewhere, but he should go do his due diligence and take a few assistant coaching jobs and learn about how to run a team. Because
which is what we said from the beginning when they announced he was being hired. We were like, where is this coaching experience coming from? Going from doing a ESPN show to being the head coach for an NFL team. That's a big, big shift.
Yeah, it's kind of funny, kind of like, people who are on the radio or even do the thing like we do when we criticize these guys. It's like, it's kind of hard to do, guys. This guy played, he was at an all-pro level. He tried to take it over to be an announcer. Not really an easy thing to do.
Well, no, and he's definitely more qualified than me. Yeah. It's just my whole problem with it in the beginning was there is gentlemen who have geared their entire lives trying to become a head coach at the highest level, which is the NFL. And for them to get those particular guys to get passed over for a guy who's never coached in the NFL at any, in any capacity, I thought that was disrespectful to those guys,
Yeah.
not to me.
Yeah, I mean, Brian Dable, 25 years as an assistant coach before he finally got a shot at it.
My point exactly.
So, I mean, he put the time in. All right, let's take a look at the playoff pictures now. Pretty much all is taken except for a couple of slots. Cowboys are playing Washington this weekend. Washington starting Sam Howell. Couldn't do any worse than Carson Wentz did last week, as you texted me.
I said that last week. I said, this move by old Chico could really backfire. I said, this kid came in and provided a spark when Wentz was really struggling and the team was struggling. They turned back to Taylor Heineke, who stepped in and won them some football games and got the team going in the right direction. And then just to dump him and put Carson Wentz back in like he's Pat Mahomes or something, I thought was stupid. And it sure, I said that this could backfire on him big time, and it blew up right in his face. And that was a horrible performance by Carson Wentz. And I'm going to go ahead and put that entire loss, which eliminated them from the playoffs, squarely on the coach and the quarterback's shoulders right there.
Oh, yeah.
And do they get rid of Wentz again? I mean, is Wentz going to his 5th team in 5 years after this?
He's got to.
He's not staying in Washington.
No, you can't, because there's going to be, I don't think Lamar Jackson's leaving Baltimore, but potentially you could have Lamar Jackson, Derek Carr, Jimmy Garoppolo. People are talking about Tom Brady, even though I think he should retire, and they think he's heading to Vegas. That's the rumor that everybody trying to float, and maybe Aaron Rodgers. So those 5 quarterbacks could be floating around looking for teams in the off seasons. All of them better options than for Washington, and especially better than Carson Wentz.
I don't see Rodgers going anywhere. I think he kind of missed the window there. If he was going to go somewhere, I think he had an opportunity to do it. He didn't go anywhere. The Packers locked him up. They signed him to that big contract. I think he's going to be in Green Bay until he decides to hang him up.
Now, especially if they do make the playoffs now, and even if they win a game, and he seems to like these young wide receivers. So you could be right. He could be sticking around, and he's adjusted his play. They're running the ball more. He's not throwing the ball, so. He's kind of going through a late John Elway maturation when Elway finally got Terrell Davis and decided, well, I don't have to do it all myself. It's a nice change for him. But Washington will entertain the Dallas Cowboys. There's another question. Dallas Cowboys, how much should they be playing their backups?
I wouldn't. I mean, they played them pretty deep into that Titans game, and I didn't understand that. I was very confused. I mean, I know they had stuff to play for, but let's be honest, they could have won that game easily without playing Micah Parsons. I mean, it didn't help that Dak kept throwing it to the other team, but that's even more of a reason why I would have put Cooper Rush in there, and I would have taken – I mean, Micah Parsons, I don't know if you saw, he had his whole hand completely taped up, and it was like a club. He couldn't move he couldn't use his hand at all. Yeah. And when he recovered that fumble, he had to use the one hand and then kind of put his club over top of it. I didn't understand why he was even in the game. He's banged up, sit him down, rest him, go ahead. Same thing with Dak. Dak's struggling a little bit. I would have sat him down, got him some rest, made sure he was healthy, and put Cooper Rush, who's played pretty well when he's been in there, and had him win that game. They win that game handily, in my opinion, whether it's Dak or Cooper Rush, or whether or not Micah plays or not.
I agree. So let's see. We get the Buccaneers who made it. They clinched. The Vikings are limping in. The Vikings are on their way down, while the 49ers and Brock Purdy keep getting better.
Yeah, I mean, if you put these two teams side by side, you look and the records are very, very similar. But which team's hotter right now? I mean, the 12-4 49ers or the 12-4 Minnesota Vikings? I mean, I definitely think it's the San Francisco 49ers. And despite the fact that they're on quarterback number 3, it doesn't seem to really matter the way that this play calling's been done, the way that this defense is playing. I just don't feel like anything's slowing down the 49ers at this particular point in time.
Brock Purdy. Both of us, we defended Jimmy Garoppolo, but I don't see how you can put him back in right now. You got to ride the hot hand.
I love Jimmy Garoppolo, but I am with you. I mean, I don't know if you recall, but I really liked the pick of Brock Purdy. I didn't know really why the Niners picked him, but I liked him as a late round pick. I thought he was a good value for somebody in the 4th, 5th, maybe even 3rd round. The fact that he fell all the way to the 7th round, I thought he was a really, really good value for somebody to potentially develop. Now, did I think he was going to come in year 1 and play like this? Hell no. But I thought he was a really good pick for somebody to take in the late rounds, and he's exceeding all expectations. That's for sure.
Yeah, I mean, I like Brock Purdy his first couple of years out at Iowa State with the Cyclones. He did a great job, but then his junior and senior year kind of shaky. I mean, they still won. He still had some good bowl games. I mean, for some reason, I remember people talking about him being in the Heisman conversation and a first-round draft choice, and I was waiting to see that breakout game at Iowa State. Maybe he had it one week when I wasn't watching him, but he did have skill. But I was wondering if he could put the package in it, much like Kenny Pickett. Solid, good stats on a good Pitt team, but it's amazing how these two guys who nobody talked about in the draft. I mean, Kenny Pickett got picked way high to be the replacement for Roethlisberger, but nobody really thought about him. They thought it was going to be Trubisky for a year. Pickett may go in a year or two or whatever. We'll see what happens. And then no one talked about Brock Purdy. It was all about Trey Lance and Jimmy Garoppolo. And now these two can basically be starting playoff quarterbacks. Not
True.
too bad.
Yeah, true. I mean, Kenny Pickett doesn't surprise me as much as I thought he would be starting by mid-season, but I didn't really expect them to be in the playoff picture, especially with the way that the year started. I thought that the Steelers were pretty much cooked like you did. I can't lie. I thought they were going to be out of it, and the way they've fought back is commendable. But I'm not really surprised by the way that Kenny Pickett's played. I think he showed me a lot his last 2 years, especially at Pittsburgh. And I expected him to be the best quarterback in that draft, and I certainly think he is.
All right, let's take a look at a team that we were waiting last year to get to the playoffs until the Raiders disqualified them. And now with the coach we sometimes like, sometimes don't like, but we love that quarterback, the Chargers. Two things. One thing that's another team. And that's why I wish people would – I don't see any reason to be floating around coaching changes until there's some more – well, I guess there's a couple openings out there, so I shouldn't say that. But Sean Payton to the Chargers is one of the things I'm hearing right now. And I'm like, be fair to these guys. Let them go into the playoffs and let these coach concentrate on what he's doing. If they're going to get him the door, let's see what he does in the playoffs first.
Yeah, I don't think there's been any decision made at all in LA about the coach right now. I mean, he's done a great job considering the mass amount of injuries that they've suffered on defense and offense. I mean, they played half the year without their 2 top wide receivers, and then they played the entire year without their huge free agent defensive acquisition in J.C. Jackson. He hasn't played really at all. They've had several other key players, Joey Bosa being one, Derwin James being the other, banged up for most of the season. And the way that he's gotten that defense to play without the majority of their stars, I think he's to be commended, not fired.
Yeah. So what do you think about, it's amazing when I think about it. If you just add to this, Joe Burrow, Mahomes, Herbert, maybe, well, we're going to count 2 out right now. But, I mean, Lamar Jackson, potentially, if his knee gets better. Kenny Pickett. The AFC has a nice batch of young quarterbacks that are going to be around for a while. and they're all going to be in the playoffs. It looks like right now.
Yeah, I mean that's where the juice is at the moment, is in the AFC, with all these young guys who have been performing either for the last couple of years or performing at a high level this year. It's just amazing to me to see the disparity in the position. I mean, it seems like the wealth of the quarterback position talent is all in the AFC at the current moment. I mean, Jalen Hurts is doing his thing and should get more credit than he's even receiving. But yeah, it seems like it's all stacked on the one deck, doesn't it?
Oh, and I forgot Trevor Lawrence.
Trevor Lawrence has been playing very well
Yeah.
the past few weeks. And Justin Herbert, I think you have to mention as well. I think you did, but I think you have to talk about him. I mean, the Chargers have won 5 of 6, and they finished the season or have been finishing up the season with 4 wins in a row. And like I said, 5 of 6. The only game they lost was that, 1 touchdown game to the Raiders on the road. Other than that, they've been pretty clean the past 6 weeks.
And Mac Jones. I mean, and maybe not a spectacular year this year. Don't know if it has to do with coaching. Don't know if it has to do with injuries around him or stuff. But they are on the verge of making the playoffs. It would be 2 for 2 as a quarterback making the playoffs. And maybe he's not top echelon, but in that range of those AFC quarterbacks, you'd have to drop him in at least 7th.
Yeah, I think so. I think he's done pretty well considering, like you said, the coaching situation. And then also he doesn't have a ton of talent on his team at the wide receiver position. I think he's done more with less than a lot of these guys. And then you've got your boy Zach Wilson over there for the Jets, who, wow. What are they going to do with that guy? I mean, at this point, I would just cut him and move on. But I don't know what they're going to do.
Well, there's another team that should be looking at Derek Carr, looking at Jimmy G, looking at one of these guys that's going to be hanging around, a veteran guy that can come in there and settle that offense down, because they're going to have, the running attack. They got the wide receivers in place. The offensive line seems to be gelling. Their defense. I think their defense. It's a lot of people talking up here about how bad their defense has been over the last few weeks. But I think they're beaten up. And I think they're beaten down mentally because, their offense has been so bad.
I think they're worn out.
Yeah, I think it's got to get to you. We talked about this 2 weeks ago. It's got to get to you when, you go, you get the ball back and they give it right back, and you got to get back out there.
Yeah, or you get a turnover and hand the ball to your offense on the 12, and they go backwards and kick a field goal. I mean, that's just unacceptable. And I just don't understand why they're not getting more criticism for the way they've drafted these quarterbacks. I mean, I didn't like the pick of Darnold. I certainly didn't like the pick of Zach Wilson, and both of them have turned out to be a disaster.
It's funny because the Jet quarterbacks, I go back to the late 70s with these guys. When it finally came time to kick Namath to the curb, they bring in another Alabama quarterback, Richard Todd, and they bring in a Georgia quarterback, Matt Robinson, and they had that quarterback controversy. Then Todd gets taken over by Kenny O'Brien, and there was Pat Ryan from Tennessee that came in, and he was the guy everybody loved. And then it's been funny. They're a team that always seems the fans want the backup quarterback since Namath, no matter who they bring in. I mean, I don't know. They just never seem to get it right.
The backup's usually better in most instances, unfortunately. I mean, I remember when they had Ray Lucas, in the boys, and everybody wanted Ray Lucas to play, and he came in and gave him a little bit of spark. And then, Jay Fiedler came off the bench and played pretty well for them. It's just they haven't been historically. They have not been able to draft a quarterback at a high level. Ken O'Brien, I think, was a good quarterback and maybe one of their best draft picks. But as a grand scheme type of thing, they're just not good at drafting that position. And I think it would behoove them to bring in a veteran at this point and just see who they can get and get the best guy they can get and put him out there and let this defense is ready to roll. Their skill players are ready to roll. Garrett Wilson was a home run pick. Even Elijah the wide receiver that wanted to quit several weeks ago. He's starting to play better. I see some talent at the running back position with Breece Hall and Michael Carter, and those guys are playing well. They got CJ Uzomah and a couple other rookie tight ends that are starting to come around. I mean, they just need a quarterback, and that's been the situation for a long time in New York.
Well, the thing about it, it's also with Breece Hall is you got to remember that next year will probably be he'll have to go through a lot of what Saquon went through last year, but that's okay because it's a building process. Like you said, you use Carter, you do it by committee, but at least you know you have that guy, and when he's fully healthy again, you look at how Saquon played this year.
Yeah,
so it does work out. Let's do a little bit back to the playoff picture. 3 games. Steelers, Browns, Patriots, Bills, Titans, Jaguars. Who are your picks in those games?
Wow. The Tennessee game is really difficult to me just because of I have a hard time. I want to go with the underdog in this game, but it's just hard for me to do so with the way they're playing. It's not even so much the quarterback position with them, playing Josh Dobbs. I thought Josh Dobbs looked really good for a guy who'd been on the team for 8 days, for a guy who had never started a game in the NFL. All that being said and all that being known, I thought he did a great job. The problem was everything else. I mean, the wide receiver position has just been a mess all year long. Travion Burks is either hurt or dropping balls. The rest of the wide receivers are worse. The offensive line has just been an utter disaster all season long. The defense has been unable to stop anyone on third down. This team is just going in the wrong direction, and I have to take the Jaguars just because momentum is a real thing, people.
Right.
I know some people deny it, but it is a real thing, and the Jaguars just have all of the momentum right now, and they're playing at home. I just don't see the Titans got shellacked 2-3 weeks ago by the Jaguars in their building. I don't see how they go down and beat them in their building. And the other games you mentioned, you were talking about Cleveland and Pittsburgh also, correct?
Right.
I've got to go with Pittsburgh in this one. I like the way that Pittsburgh's playing, as I just mentioned with the other game. Pittsburgh's also at home. I think Kenny Pickett's getting more and more comfortable. I think the defense is playing better. I got to TJ Watt is back in the lineup. I've got to go with Pittsburgh in that one. And then the third game you were talking about, was it New England?
Bills, Pats.
Yeah, Bills, Pats. That one I really have no idea. The Patriots are hard to predict. The consistency that we're used to with Bill Belichick coach teams hasn't really been there all year. I think that's why they're a 500 team. They look real good one week. The next week they look not so good. And then obviously the Bills, with all they've been through in the last week, I have really no clue how motivated they'll be to play. I don't know how good it's going to look. I just have no idea what this game is going to look like. I thought that the Pats would whip up on the Dolphins last week, considering they were on quarterbacks 2 and 3. And really, it was a very close game.
Yeah, and I think the Bills, with the news they got today, I think they'll put one of those, win one for Damon or Damar. On Sunday. I think they'll be motivated.
I said that. I said that I could see them rallying around their brother there and going after it and getting motivated. But you know what? I could also see it going the other way, where their thoughts are elsewhere and their emotions are just spent. So we'll have to wait and see how it goes before we all really know.
Yeah, true. A little college football. I know you were disappointed about the Ohio State Georgia game and how that worked out.
I really wasn't. I mean, I was disappointed, obviously, that we didn't win. I wanted to win the game. I wanted to play for the national championship. I honestly could see us beating TCU and winning the national championship. I would bet money that we would beat the Horned Frogs.
Yeah.
But I can't look at this game in its totality and get upset with the way the players played, with the game plan, with the way that the coach is coached. I mean, let's be honest. Let's break it down and be 100% honest about this game. No Jackson Smith and Jigba. No Travion Henderson when the game started. Then first half, Cade Stover goes down, our big-time tight end, the only pass-catching tight end that's been a factor all year long. He goes down in the early in the first half. And then after the targeting call, and I'm calling it targeting, after the helmet-to-helmet collision, Marvin Harrison Jr. is done. And yet they didn't quit. Right. They kept going down. They kept fighting. C.J. Stroud played his best game as a Buckeye, in my opinion, and just had some unreal plays in crunch time situations. I couldn't be more proud of my Buckeyes right now. And I'm being honest, playing the number one team in the country, playing the defending champions on their secondary home turf with their cameras installed, filming our practices, with the refs cheating for them. They had a lot going for them, and we did everything we could to try and win that game. And I'm very proud of the coaching staff and the players following that ball game.
I'll tell you, it was a game that lived up to what should be a national championship game.
Yeah, and people were like making fun of the Big Ten after this, and I was like, you know what? These were the two most competitive college football semifinal games that I can recall. And I wouldn't make fun of the Big Ten. The Buckeyes played, the team up north played in the other game, and both of these games went down to the last second. So how can you make fun of the two teams that came on the losing end of it? I thought they both fought hard and played pretty well and displayed the type of talent that they've got.
Now, of course, and as usual, since he's been in Michigan, the rumors are flying that he's going to be going back to the pros, Harbaugh. How wise a decision do you think that is for him, A? And B, how would it took so long for them to get that the team back right? I know you don't care about them, but it is good when Michigan's good in the Big Ten. They bring the money into the league. How much of a loss, or who could you see going there that could replace him?
You know, that would be the tough thing right now, would be replacing him. I with the candidates that are available, I don't know if you really could. I don't know what you would do if he were to bail on the team right now. That's from the team perspective. From right. Coach Harbaugh's perspective, I could see him going to the NFL right now. There's a lot of good jobs open. The Panthers job, the Denver job, the Colts job. All three of those jobs historically have been pretty good coaching jobs. And I know he wants to get back into the NFL. And why not parlay your success? If you really want to go to the NFL, why not now? I mean, you're never going to be a hotter commodity, in my opinion. And I think if you're going to do it, you should do it now. And I think the team's in a good spot. They've got really good players and good talent coming back next year. I hate to say it because it makes me want to vomit, but they do have a good team coming back, and I think they're going to be fine no matter who their coach is. I mean, think about it. They lost both coordinators after last season, and did it show up, in your opinion?
No. The only thing I'd be worried about is, J.J. McCarthy. If Harbaugh were to leave, would he go into the transfer portal, not knowing what the future would be? You might lose a few of these players. You
may, but that's all speculation at this point. I don't know whether these guys would jump at this point. I think it would be tough because a lot of these teams have already got their starters in place,
right?
At the quarterback position, at the running back position. I mean, a lot of these teams, there's still a couple of guys, filling depth out with the portal. But as far as starting roles go and star players, most of them have already got a home. So I don't know whether there'd be a mass exodus. I tend to believe there would not be. But, it doesn't help these guys out when they interview him and he's like, I'm staying at Michigan. I can't predict the future, but I think I'm staying at Michigan. Well, dude, you're the only one that can predict your future, okay? Right. If anyone knows your future, it's you. So
you're deciding it.
You're deciding your future. So if you're coming back, then say I'm coming back. If you're not, say you're not. You're the one that knows, dude. You're the only one that knows. So that kind of that right there is what leads me to believe that I think he's interested in one of these jobs. I know he was interested in the Vikings job last year. I know he wanted it. And, I'm just not sure. I know they've already talked to him in Carolina. I've got a very strong feel. Did you know that Jim Harbaugh was in the Ring of Honor in Indianapolis?
Yeah, I knew. I know. I heard about it this year. In fact, I just heard about it.
Do you know why?
Well, they loved him as a quarterback. Do you remember
I know, but he only played there for 3 seasons. Why the hell do you put a guy in your Ring of Honor who didn't win a Super Bowl and only played for your team for 3 years? What?
Well, you got to remember, they're basically, they're the Colts, but their history, their real history is in Baltimore.
Right.
Outside of the Peyton Manning years, not so much the rest of them. Who are you going to put up there? Jeff George?
Well, I don't know, but Jeff George probably played just as long as Jim Harbaugh did there.
Yeah, but he got him that 1 year, and there was the big year that the controversy over why they didn't take Trent Dilfer.
Yeah,
and he gets him to within a Hail Mary pass of beating the Steelers at Pittsburgh. I remember watching that game.
Right,
but I don't know. These Ring of Fame things, I don't really get that involved in because some are just ridiculous. The things they put up there and they're retiring in numbers, it's just crazy.
But putting a guy who was on your team for 3 years into the Ring of Honor, that to me is just crazy talk.
But I live within 40 minutes of Yankee Stadium, and they retire everybody's number that's available. If a guy once caught a ball to end the game, they retire his number and give him a day. That's how if they do it for the money, I guess. It's crazy. It is crazy. Another guy I wanted to touch with you before we wrap up. Sam Hartman.
Can we finish this off though? He was 20. He actually played in Indianapolis for 4 years, so it was a year longer than I expected. His record as the starting quarterback for the Colts was 20-26.
Yeah.
How the hell do you put someone who's got a losing record in as your Ring of Honor?
They just, it's beyond belief. I don't know. I don't know. I don't know what it is. Sam Hartman going to Notre Dame. How do you feel about that move?
I think it's a great move for Notre Dame. Do I think that makes them a national championship contender? No, I don't. I think they could be a playoff team if a lot of the other positions go right. They need weapons. I know he's a good quarterback, but he has to have somebody to throw it to, and their wide receiver talent and their wide receiver depth concerns me, no matter who the quarterback is. So that is going to be interesting to see how it works out. But I do think it's an upgrade. My biggest question mark is they have a quarterback coming in who is a pretty talented young man as a freshman who's coming into Notre Dame here in this class. And, I want to know what he thinks about Sam Hartman coming in, because was he told that he was going to have the job? And was he told that he was going to be the guy? And obviously I'm talking about Kenny Minchey, the 6'2", 215-pound 4-star quarterback out of Pope John Paul II here in Tennessee. He's the number 13 ranked quarterback in the country. And I want to know what he thinks about this move, because kids don't want to sit anymore. We saw
they're all in a hurry.
Yeah, we saw this with Quinn Ewers. He went to Ohio State. Ryan Day's done a pretty damn good job developing quarterbacks. Quinn Ewers didn't want to stick around and get developed. He wanted to get on the field, and he transferred right away. After 4 months at Ohio State, he transferred to Texas. And, I could see this young man not being too happy about them going out and bringing in a fifth-year guy from Wake Forest.
Yeah, well, the thing is that, he's going to be gone after this year. One thing going for him. But the confusing part is, if you got to figure Drew Pine left because he saw Minchey was coming in and he knew he wasn't going to beat out Minchey. So how does this translate to – He went out and got Hartman, so he's got Hartman in mind. So I guess Mincy's going to have to deal with it.
I guess. I mean, does Buckner come back? I mean, he played pretty well in the bowl game.
Yeah, I mean Buckner.
Where's he going to go? I mean, I don't see where he's going to go. I mean, like I said, these spots are filling up.
You could keep Buckner as a change of pace quarterback. He's a better runner than he is a passer.
I understand that, but he played pretty well in that bowl game, and he threw the football with pretty decent accuracy. And I think you can't just discount him in the way that he played, considering he hadn't been on the field since September, Joe.
Yeah.
He hadn't touched the field since September, and he goes out there against a good South Carolina team, throws for almost 300 yards and 3 touchdowns.
You know, having depth is not a bad thing to have. Notre Dame hasn't had depth in a long time, so I'm not going to cry about it.
No, I think it's a good problem. Yeah. I think it's a good problem, but my only concern with bringing Hartman is, how do those guys feel about it? Do they all leave? That's kind of what we've seen, and I'm very interested to see what happens in Texas. Does Quinn stick around if Arch is named the starter? I mean, I don't see him wanting to be Arch's backup, and I don't see them, spending the amount of money. I mean, I heard they spent $500,000 on that weekend that the Mannings came in town. They're spending $500,000 for their backup.
Like they couldn't pay for their own fun.
No shit. That's my favorite thing is all these guys that are millionaires never pay for anything. I never understand that. The richest damn people in the world don't pay for shit. And I've never understood that. Those are the people that should pay. They have the money. They have it in their wallets.
Exactly.
They've got the black credit card. Let them pay for everything. Why do they get everything for free? It makes no sense.
But I'll tell you, the Arch thing worries me because I think this could turn out to be the worst place for him to go. I just think Texas was a bad choice for him. I think he would have been better off going to Ole Miss, like his grandfather, his uncle, even Tennessee, or a real SEC power, not Texas, which has been in flux. Can't get the coaching thing right since what's his name left, the guy from North Carolina,
Mac Brown.
Mac Brown. They haven't had a consistent coaching staff since he left.
They still don't.
So I know Sarkisian.
They still don't, and yeah, I think I'm with you. I think this is a problem. I think it could be a very bad spot. Look at all the coaches that have been there and failed, and the reason they failed is because the infrastructure in place is not conducive to winning. There's a ton of pressure to win. There's boosters with their hands inside the programs everywhere, manipulating things, making decisions, calling shots. Who the hell's calling the shots there? It's not Sark. It's the people that are in charge. It's the people with the money. It's the people, the boosters, and the people in the back pockets of the administrators. Those are the people that are in charge. And if things don't go well, the fan base, the boosters, they all get real pissed real quick. And I think it could be bad for him.
Yeah, and they need a real coach, a Saban type coach. But there's a lot around, or a Debo Sand.
Yeah, a lot of teams need a Saban.
No, but I'm just saying that the alumni can't push around.
No, I know what you're saying. I
mean, that's just like you need that if you're gonna have if Texas is ever gonna get straightened out. One thing I want to say before I leave or we leave tonight is living up in this area. I don't know what's going to go on with his contract. I'll say both the guys, but for most, all the idiots on Sports Talk Radio who called Saquon Barkley a bust, sometime take a look at his stats. Outside of even his injury-prone second year, he ran for 1,000 yards. He ran for 1,300 this year, 1,300 as a rookie. The only 2 years he really didn't have a good year was when he busted his knee. And last year, as you and I talked about at length, he's trying to come back, and it takes about a year. Yeah. The Giants should sign him. And one thing, he's only lost one fumble in 5 years.
That's pretty amazing.
That's pretty damn good for a guy, especially when you're the only weapon and you're getting pounded on every play.
Yeah, and you're supposed to win every game. But as we were talking about with JT Daniels and his fourth team in 4 years, well, there's a lot of guys that are trying to break his record. Emory Jones, who left Florida to go to Arizona State, he's now going to Cincinnati. he's on his third team in 3 years. Obviously, we got JT Daniels, 4 teams in 4 years. Spencer Sanders is jumping ship. Xavier Ward is going from Washington State to, I think he's going to Sam Houston State. There's a lot of guys that have already transferred once that are now transferring again. So it should be very interesting to see what happens. But, one name that hasn't been talked about that much that I think is a very interesting move at the quarterback position is the young kid from Ole Miss, Luke Altmaier, who was a huge recruit, ended up getting beat out by Jackson Dart from USC in his sophomore season. He is transferring to Illinois. And I think that's going to be very interesting to see how that works out. I love the DJ Ukulele move to Oregon State. I think that's a perfect spot for him. I think he's going to do really well there. And then you got Jeff Sims, the Georgia Tech quarterback, who's been good when he's been on the field. He's going to Nebraska. It's going to be very interesting to see how some of these quarterbacks pan out as we move forward in the next season.
Yeah.
Keaton Slovis. Excuse me. I left out Keaton Slovis, who left USC, went to Pitt. Now he's going to BYU.
Well, at least they're seeing the country.
Yeah.
See it while you're young.
Drew Pine actually committed to Arizona State. I don't know if you heard that.
Yeah, I saw that, and I don't get that move, except maybe he doesn't want to be around, the Connecticut. I don't blame him. Probably better weather out there and everything.
Probably better ladies.
I mean, he's, like I said, I didn't know the kid very well. I only covered a couple of his games. He was a good high school quarterback in Connecticut, but that doesn't go a long distance. What's his name? Tim Boyle was a good quarterback in Connecticut. Okay. It's good high school quarterbacks in Connecticut don't usually pan out on the long run. I mean, Will Levis, another guy, Connecticut quarterback. We'll see. Even though I hear he got the last nail in his coffin because Mel Kiper picked him as the best quarterback in this draft.
Yeah, I'm still scratching my head on that one. But your boy Graham Mertz from Wisconsin, he signed with Florida. Honestly, he might get to play there because they're not in good shape at the quarterback position. They've got Jack Miller, the third from Ohio State down there, and nothing really else, especially with the arrest. Oh my gosh, what a disaster that was. For the young quarterback there at Florida getting arrested for the child porn. What a just hopeless situation that is.
Yeah, it is. It's very, very troubling. Very troubling. So, all right, people, thanks for tuning in tonight. We will be back next week. Glad that what started out as a tragic week is now looking more bright as we head into the last weekend of the NFL season. And we'll have our playoff picks for next week when we get back together. What do you got on Sundays in the show?
No clue. No clue. We may take this week off just because there's not a whole ton to talk about. We may get together and do a little bit more talk about the transfer portal and where guys are lining up, as well as the recruiting situation, because there is still going to be some guys signing in February. So we may talk a little bit about that on Sunday if we get together.
All right, sir. Have a great weekend. Hopefully the weather holds up, and I will see you next week.
Sounds good, boss.